Hello, my name is Daniel Velasco, and I'm really in a privileged situation in which I have here in front of me Dr. Richard Bandler, my trainer, my master, my professor, and a person whom I happen to know 20 years ago. And now I recently have had a chance to follow not only in Orlando, but also in London and many other places. Dr. Bandler, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. Actually, what I wanted to talk about is what is NLP? People have known more about NLP now that we need things for changing and for being better. Could you please tell us in your word, what is this thing that you created, co-created?
Well, neurolinguistic programming is the study of successful conscious and unconscious behaviors. What it is it's Noam Chomsky built a model of language called linguistics, transformational linguistics specifically, which modeled what we do unconsciously to both speak and understand language. And it represented it well enough, although it didn't have an application itself. Ultimately, it's allowed us to build machines that can process language. And what I did was to do the same thing, but with thoughts and feelings, because I found out that if you change the way you think about things, it changes how you feel and therefore changes what you're capable of doing, and sometimes more importantly, not doing, like being afraid of heights or things like that. But everything from learning to spell, learning to read, learning to play music, all of these things, if you think about them one way, it becomes easy. And if you think about it other ways, it's difficult. I studied people who got over phobias, not how people get them. Psychology is an archaeological process of going back and finding out what went wrong. And that, to me, would work if what we did was to try to figure out how to make people worse. But instead, I found out how people got over problems and built a machine ultimately, which was called the meta model, which is a problem-solving machine. I did that almost 50 years ago with John Grinder. And since that time, we have evolved a body of information that gives people the ability to sell better, negotiate better, influence better, learn better. I've written books on education, sales, books that are for personal change, for people to get over problems or to become more dynamic, more motivated, make better decisions. It's a plethora body of information over 50 years of having solved problems from everything from the military to business to personal problems that people have.
That sounds just great. And when I think about better, bigger, faster, quicker, more wiser ideas, then I can think of change. And when people think about change, they might also think about uncertainty. So my question is it change? Is change a necessary evil, or it's just part of life?
Well, it's definitely part of life. People are typically changing for the better or the worse. They're not really staying the same. And, that most of the people I got as clients for the first 25 years I was in practice were people that had been given up on by people. And doctors would tell me they'll never change. But actually, if I talked to them, it sounded like they were getting worse for years. That some people therapy wasn't helpful and some it was, but a lot of them got worse. They'd start out with one phobia and end up with 20. I had one that started with one phobia and ended up with 300 or 300 plus actually. And, that if you're doing things with a schizophrenic and they're not getting better and all you're doing is upping their medication, you're not teaching them to control their neurology. And if a salesman is selling more cars by working longer hours rather than by increasing his close ratio, if we're spending more hours teaching somebody in the military to shoot a gun properly instead of less hours, then we're not taking advantage of what really counts. In an Olympic game, because the Olympics have just gone on, the difference between winning and losing can be hundredths of a second. And this isn't about skill. This is all up here. When we train athletes to think better, they make less mistakes. When you teach a CEO to think better, they make less mistakes. And when you teach a person in their personal life to think better, they make less mistakes. and they achieve lots more faster, quicker, easier.
Wow. So teaching, learning, and controlling your neurology and using machines. That reminds me of DHE. I mean,
Design human engineering,
exactly.
yes. Design human engineering is where you build new learning programs on purpose. You know, we used to elicit strategies from successful people and install them in people that were not so successful so they could learn better. You know, I got a good speller to tell me how they did it and taught a bad speller what the good speller was doing, and they ended up being able to spell, pass their spelling tests. They were only fifth graders and it helped them. I wrote a whole book about this called Teaching Excellence. It's a book for teachers to help them save time while they're teaching, because a lot is expected of them now other than teaching. To me, that design human engineering is where we went in and built optimal models of thinking that probably didn't exist in a person, but achieved the task better. And it's a lot more fun.
Oh,
yeah. That's coming up this year.
I know it's coming. That's why
it's coming.
Great. And one final question then.
Yes.
Do we really need other people in order to change? I mean, a coach, NLP trainer?
Well, the trouble is if you're making bad decisions, then when you start making decisions about yourself, you get caught in a loop. So sometimes having a coach and having a trainer and having somebody on the outside, and in NLP is defined in the Webster Dictionary as a self-help system. That's absolutely wrong. I know, I made it up. In the Oxford English Dictionary, it's called the study of subjective experience, and the study of successful behaviors. That's more accurate. And when you try to evaluate yourself, there's a lot of stuff you can do. I put out Frogs into Princes, and there were people curing themselves of phobias and sending me postcards from the Grand Canyon. I'm hanging off the Grand Canyon for $8.95. After 8 years, I got over my phobia of heights. But some things you can do yourself, but some things you need help with. You need somebody who's highly skilled. If what they do doesn't work in the first couple sessions, I'd say go to somebody else, because if they can't get it in a few sessions, they're probably never going to get it. That's my advice to all of you.
Thank you very much. Any final comments to people who are watching now?
Yes, get smarter. Change the way you think. It will change how you feel, and therefore change what you can do.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
You bet. My